Hey there, my friends. Welcome to the Links to Messiah podcast, where we are passionate about teaching our children all about the connections between the Old and New Testament. I'm your host, Rachel Links Kushner, also known as the Chief Enthusiasm Officer of Links to Messiah. And I am so thrilled to have you join us today. Come along and discover how your family and children can grow in their faith as you discover the beautiful links that God reveals throughout Scripture about the history of His people and His Son Jesus, our Messiah. Hi, my name is Rachel Kushner, and this is the Links to Messiah podcast. I thought it might be good to have the first episode where I just simply tell you my story and tell you how Links to Messiah began. Links to Messiah was officially launched in 2022 at Passover time, but the true story really begins with a young girl nicknamed Mutti in pre-World War II in Austria. Mutti was the affectionate nickname given to my grandmother by her son, my dad, Herb. The nickname means mother in German. More on that coming up. Let me back up a little bit and tell you about my parents. When I say I hit the jackpot with my parents, I mean, it's hard to describe because both of my parents came from humble and very challenging upbringings. But when they got married, they covenanted together to break the cycle of dysfunction. Don't get me wrong, it was not perfect. There was that time where my dad started to take off the bathroom door because my sister wouldn't unlock it. There were multiple eye rolls from my mom as my dad rambled on about something meaningless. But overall, they loved each other. They really loved each other, and it showed. And my sisters and I could feel it. We lived it. I get my Jewish heritage from my dad. He was only 2 years old when his parents narrowly escaped the Nazis in 1939. Before I share more on this story, let me tell you about my mom, Sandy, or as my dad called her, Sandy. She's a Midwestern girl from the United States. Her mom died when she was 18, and her father was an alcoholic. She had her share of heartache growing up. But when she was in nursing school, she gave her life to Jesus. Now, that's an incredible story that I will save for another time. But as Jesus always does, He changed her life and gave her new purpose. My mom was a stabilizing force in our home, always full of practical wisdom. She loved the Lord till her final day. I can just picture her in heaven today, worshiping Jesus and loving every second of it. Maybe she's playing her flute, or maybe she's just singing her heart out in worship. Back to my dad. Soon after my father's birth in 1937, Mutti, my grandmother, in her broken English, remembers being in her apartment when suddenly the doorbell rang and 4 very husky SS soldiers with big Hitler crosses on their guns stood on the front of our door. One was standing outside the door, one pulled out the telephone wires, and the other 2 ransacked the place. They took our jewelry and many other things. When they left, we could not talk or do anything. We were so astonished and afraid. Mutti saw the destruction when Hitler came to occupy Austria in March of 1938. She writes in her journal, "The SS trucks drove all day over the city. To whomever was on the street was arrested. First only the Jews, and whoever ran into their hands. They were faced with torture." Mutti was resourceful, smart, hardworking, and a resilient woman. She begged and pleaded and paid off multiple government officials to receive the proper paperwork needed to come to the United States. It was a requirement to have a sponsorship from a United States citizen at that time. This required her to write letters to complete strangers in the United States through any connection she could find. She was completely desperate because she knew death was imminent. Mutti, Grandpa, and my dad fled Vienna on a train. From Vienna, they went to Genoa, Italy, and from Italy's port, they boarded a ship called the Rex and traveled to New York City. They arrived in the United States of America on Columbus Day, October 13, 1938. Upon arrival, the established sponsorship fell through. Mutti, Grandpa, and my dad turned to the Jewish welfare for assistance. New connections were created in St. Louis, Missouri, so their tiny little family of 3 relocated. It was not what they expected. They lived in an abandoned boxcar with broken glass windows and rodents scurrying across the floor. They scraped by and struggled to support their growing son. Life was not easy for them, but they were survivors to their core, and together they learned how to make things work for their family. I'm going to end with that for episode 1, but come back for episode 2, where you will hear how my Jewish father found Jesus and why and how Links to Messiah began. Thank you for being a part of the Links to Messiah podcast family. Your support means the world to us, and your feedback and engagement keep us going strong. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends and family. Let's continue growing this incredible community together. Until next week, keep reading the Bible to your children, keep their curiosity burning, and keep coming back for more tips to anchor your child's faith to Jesus, our Messiah. This is your host, Rachel Links Kushner, signing off with a big smile and a heart full of gratitude.